I almost didn't do my annual video on United player wages for the season just gone, due to the poor standard of performance as a squad. When we were terrible 2 years ago under the death throes of Ollie's tenure and Ralph's short-lived custody of the side, I didn't even bother. However, with the epic cup win, and in the manner in which it was achieved, it's lifted the entire fan base, and so it seems appropriate enough. Regardless, I think it's just good anyway to see how much our players are currently paid, who is value for money, and what we're going to save on the exodus of recently departed Red Devils, like Tony Martial and Rafael Varane, with other high-profile exits to shortly follow. As you can see, there are 5 tiers, with each squad player destined to end up in one of them. It's all pretty self-explanatory, but if you are getting a little lost or want a heads up before we begin, I've written everything in the description. The one point I will make clear is, the judgment of which tier they should be in isn't just if they deserve the salary they got, for better or worse, but it's also related to their peers. In other words, how did a player's teammates perform on a similar, higher or lower salary? P.S. If a significant portion of the season is missed due to injury, I'm afraid that I'll have to be ruthless with my tier allocations. You'll see what I mean. United's first Moroccan player joined on the 1st of September, but didn't play for weeks after that. He then only took part in matches periodically thereafter, rarely impressing. His saving grace was that he had a couple of very good games near the end of the season, including the cup final, but gave little else. That said, he was a loanee from Fiorentina and only cost us 65 grand a week, one of the most inexpensive players we have, but he cost a loan fee of £8.5 million. So taking into account all of these overheads, for a few good solid performances, I'm afraid he's been a waste of money for me. Next up is Antony, and I don't think you have to be a genius to see where this is going to go. The Brazilian is on a whopping 200 grand a week basic salary. It's over £10 million a year. He's the personification of United's season in one way: regression. He was average last season on the back of a big transfer fee, and this term we would have been better off had he not played. He didn't supply Hojlund up front, and struggled against mediocre opposition. He took part in 38 games, 21 of them starts, contributing a mere 3 goals, with around as many assists. Needless to say, he's also been a waste of money. Whilst Casemiro had a huge positive impact on the side in the previous campaign to this, he was erratic at best for United in this one. Looking like he lost more than a yard of pace and his high impact on dictating the midfield, he is nevertheless collecting the highest salary at the club, 350 grand a week. That's over £18 million a year. He claimed the odd important goal and near the end of the season took one for the team, struggling with several appearances at centre-back due to our never-ending injury crisis. Again, he's been a waste of money this season, and few fans will lose any sleep if he leaves in the summer. The next Red Devil up is the antithesis of the first 3 regarding his worth to the club for 23-24 season. Diogo Dalot took part in 50 matches this season, being consistent and reliable, one of the few positives from a player perspective this term. And remember, he played a lot of it out of position at left back due to Shaw and Malacia's long-term injuries. Furthermore, he's only on 85 grand a week. It's around a quarter of Casemiro's pay packet. The lad was passionate and even dangerous going forward, scoring 3 and assisting 5, the 3rd highest this season, and also took United's Players Player of the Season award. Of course he was supreme value. Diallo was injured for most of the season, and thereafter, because of the boss's stubbornness to not drop Antony, he didn't get enough opportunities to show his worth, but when he did, he generally showed up how mediocre his Brazilian teammate was. That propelled him into the side as Ten Hag stubbornly realised that his loyalty to his former Ajax charge could end up costing him his job. Varane is on just under 29 grand a week, the 2nd lowest paid player in the squad, but he only played 12 games starting just 3. So even though most of his lack of playing time was not his fault, I'm afraid it's just about right for me. Christian Eriksen is on a good salary at Old Trafford, 150 grand a week. However, he's been pretty mediocre when he's played, maybe due to not having the protection alongside him in midfield earlier in the season, or it's perhaps because the Dane is just not at this level anymore. On top of that, he's missed a massive swath of the season due to injury, only starting 14 matches in all. For his minimal contribution, I'm afraid I'm going to have to put the Dane in the overpaid tier. Next up, a former United great, Johnny Evans. The Ulsterman initially only came to train with the club pre-season. However, it seemed like the boss already saw the injury writing on the wall and signed the former United veteran as cover, but was unexpectedly involved in 30 matches, 17 of which were starts, and was generally a lot better than what he should have been for his age. His contribution was very important. For just 60 grand a week, he's been supreme value and gave everything. Good on you, Johnny. Bruno got a ton of criticism at the beginning of the season, and with his participation in all but a few games near to the end of the campaign, many placed the blame of United's first 4 to 5 month slump squarely on his shoulders. Well, the skipper has been the hub of creativity this season, been the 2nd highest goal scorer after striker Rasmus Hojlund, many of them important contributions. and there's 13 assists to his name, more than twice that of the next United player. He's on 240 grand a week, around a third of Casemiro's wage, yet he's still by far the most influential player at the club and earned the Sir Matt Busby Player of the Year award. He is still supreme value in my opinion. Still a teenager, Alejandro Garnacho played a lot of matches this campaign, scoring 10 goals, some of which were crucial. He still has issues with decision making and disappointingly only contributed 5 assists this season, albeit he was in the heart of much of our attack, and he was one of our more consistent performers. His relatively meagre 50 grand a week for his 50 matches, compared with say what Rashford did on 6 times that, he is again, relatively speaking, of supreme value. Subject to a more than necessary lengthy transfer courtship, injured for weeks at the beginning of the season and needing some time to get going, Rasmus Hojlund had a frustrating start to his United career. Add on to that the substandard service he got, and you could be forgiven for him not being the club's top scorer in his first season. However, he was. He always worked hard, and because he had little choice, often carved out his own chances. He always gave 100% for the 43 matches he took part in. Overall, I'm very pleased with the 21-year-old's contribution for 85 grand a week, nowhere near the average salary at the club. I think he's been very good value for money, and had he played almost all the games, he would have got a tier better. In recent years, Victor Lindelof may have been frustrated as he fell down the centre-back pecking order, but had he stayed fit, he would have played almost every game this term. In the end, he only made 20 starts, about 40% of the total matches, and another 8 subs appearances. When he did play, he was rarely a stalwart, and his 120 grand a week salary is around average for the club. With his sporadic availability and mediocre performances, I'm afraid I think he's been overpaid. Next up is Harry Maguire, and he did something that I thought impossible. He had the character to rehabilitate himself in the minds of many United fans, and when he picked up the Premier League Player of the Month, perhaps also in the minds of football fans in general. He's nowhere near in the same mould as Varane or Martinez, but he was effective at the back and even nodded in with a handful of goals. However, surprisingly, he only started 25 matches, coming on as sub 6 times, and for his almost 190 grand a week, I think I'm being a little generous saying that he was about right, albeit I'm marking him down for being injured a lot. Kobbie Mainoo is on the same money that Alan Shearer snubbed United and joined Blackburn Rovers for in 1992, £10,000 a week. It's just over £500,000 a year. Mason Mount is on 25 times that. Mainoo was injured from the start of the season, but has been a revelation in almost every game he's played since he regained his fitness. He's a player of potential star quality, but with a calm, mature demeanour. He scored a handful of brilliant and/or well-taken goals, already earning himself England recognition. And he's still only 19. However, he only took part in 32 matches, but due to the outlay on him and his brilliance, he was pound for pound probably the best player we got the most value from. He is supreme value. This was a sad farewell to the United fans from Antony Martial, perennially injured, barely looking interested when he hasn't been. I use the word sad because he could have been legendary based on how he started. Instead, he began 6 games this term and scored just 2 goals in 18 matches for £250,000 a week. A demonstrable waste of money. Now, you're all going to kill me for this one, but know this, I love the Butcher too. However, by my own rules, the player in the dressing room who has the best attitude for me of any player will be on a lower tier for the season just gone. The Argentinian is on 120 grand a week, about average for the club, but he only played in 14 games, many of them not for the full 90 minutes. We saw what we missed all season when he partnered Varane in the cup final, but we paid that money for him not playing. So I'm sorry to you, him, and even myself, but Lisandro Martinez was overpaid for me based on his absence. Not the most gifted in the squad, Scott McTominay can never be accused of giving anything less than 100% when he plays. He also contributed 10 goals and 3 assists, and we never lost when he scored. In fact, we won most of our games. Most of his strikes were match winning. He is on a meagre 60 grand a week, around 17% of Casemiro's wage. So, he is of supreme value due to his low cost against his high return. Mason Mount has been unlucky. He felt the pressure in the first few games as we struggled as a team, and then he got injured and played little for the rest of the campaign, coming on as sub for 12 of his meagre 20 appearances, with some myopic fans already calling him to leave the club. Anyway, what I have to agree on is that his £250,000 a week salary is a sunk cost for the season, so at least for this campaign, Mason Mount was a waste of money. Out of all the new signings, Andre Onana struggled the most, at least for the first half of the season. The Cameroon number one's performances were replete with elementary errors, plus the occasional rush of blood to the head that cost us Champions League progression, as well as Premier League points. He improved greatly after Christmas and was generally a solid performer, but as demonstrated in the cup final, he was still capable of screwing up simple saves. The keeper's saving grace was his relatively low salary. So you may not agree, but I think he is about right in my opinion. Before the start of last season, Marcus Rashford had two very underwhelming campaigns, followed by a brilliant one in 2022-23 where he hit 30 goals. However, in the campaign just gone, he once again looked lost in most games he played, and out of the 43 matches that he took part in, he scored just 8 goals and contributed 6 assists, but only marginally better than in his dire 2021-22 campaign, as Rash is on 300 grand a week, and the likes of Garnacho produce more on a fraction of the salary. My fellow Manc goes into the waste of money level for me this season. Next up is Jadon Sancho, and he fell out with a manager early on who criticised him for his lack of punctuality and unacceptable work ethic. Sancho dragged his experience through social media, breaking Ten Hag's protocol and bringing the club into disrepute. Finally, the boss in United sent him back to where he came from, to Dortmund on loan, and we still paid the majority of his salary, whilst he took them to the Champions League final. A small saving grace is that we got more money from Dortmund because he reached the final. He's on loan, but he cost us financially and left us again without his quality, with his £250,000 a week outlay a complete waste of money for us. Luke Shaw, like Lisandro Martinez, is one of those players who, had he not been injured for most of the season, having played just 50 matches, his quality could have seen us have a better campaign by some degree. He isn't on a lot of money relatively, just 30 grand a week more than Martinez at £150,000. But with him on the sidelines again, he didn't do as much good, so I'm afraid he's a waste of money for me. Rafael Varane, like so many, struggled with injuries, playing in only about half our matches during last campaign. As with Martinez in the cup final, we saw his worth when he played in our best centre-back pairing option. The Frenchman is the second highest paid player at the club, at 340 grand a week, which makes him relatively financially less worthwhile than the Butcher, but he was involved in twice as many matches, as he's leaving, and been generous and put him in the overpaid tier. And Wan-Bissaka had a decent season, and with the fullback injury crisis, he got the right back berth. He did well when he played, but only took part in half the matches, so for half the season we threw away 90 grand a week. Had he played 3/4 or more of the matches, I'd have been happy to give him value for money, but with him missing so many, I'm afraid he's also in the overpaid tier in my opinion. Finally, the boss, Erik Ten Hag. How does he rate salary-wise against his performance in the big chair at Old Trafford? There have been few other seasons with so much injury turmoil, as well as early season issues caused by his falling out with Jadon Sancho, and what the club wanted to do with Mason Greenwood. Few would disagree that the performances in general haven't been good enough, and the Champions League campaign and League Cup title defence were frankly embarrassing and showed up shortcomings in the side that would recur again and again, almost to the end of the season. The FA Cup win and the manner in which it was achieved in the final could well have saved his job, but also papers over the cracks. Can't really compare his salary, which is £9 million a year and sits somewhere between Maguire and Eriksen, as it's like comparing apples and oranges. So due to that victory, along with the mitigating circumstances of having the most injuries in the Premier League over the course of the season, against the woeful standard of football, he also needs to be, probably generously, in the overpaid tier. So there you have it. I haven't included the likes of Tyrell Malacia, Donny van der Beek, Mason Greenwood, Facundo Palestri and others, but the video is already long, and so I don't think it'd be beneficial to include those players who just have a handful of appearances between them. Anyway, you can see in the description all the salaries of all the players in the video from the reliable site I used, Apology. So what did you make of my tier ranking for the United player wages for the 23-24 season? And who would you have moved to an upper or lower tier? Comment below and like, share and subscribe. Thank you as always for your support.